There comes a point when the weight inside you feels heavier than the world outside, when even breathing feels like an effort, and nothing seems to move forward, no matter how hard you try. Maybe you've been showing up, quietly fighting battles no one sees, carrying burdens you never asked for, and wondering how much longer you can keep pretending to be okay. This isn't weakness. It's exhaustion. Emotional, mental, spiritual. And if that's where you are right now, this message was written for you. Because Stoic philosophy isn't just ancient wisdom carved in stone. It's a living guide for moments like this, when everything feels like it's slipping, and yet something deep within you refuses to let go. In the next few minutes, we're going to explore 7 powerful ideas, not to cheer you up with cliches, but to help you reclaim your inner ground with quiet strength. These aren't theories. They are lived truths, rooted in resilience, drawn from real people like you. You are not alone in this. And if something in you still wants to keep going, even just a little, then stay, because the next part might just be the reason you never give up. Feel free to subscribe, and if this resonates, share your story below. Someone else might need it too. 1. The strength hidden in small steps. Strength doesn't always look like what the world shows us. It's not always lifting heavy weights, leading the room, or chasing monumental goals with fire in your eyes. Sometimes true strength is getting out of bed when your heart feels hollow. It's brushing your teeth while your mind is still battling the urge to disappear. It's answering a message you've avoided or preparing a meal you don't feel like eating. In these quiet moments where no one applauds and no reward seems to follow, there is a form of courage most people never recognize. And that's exactly why it matters so much. When you're in the depths of emotional pain or deep fatigue, the smallest actions become mountains. And yet each of these small steps carries meaning. They're not insignificant. They are proof that something inside you, however buried, however bruised, hasn't given up. That inner resilience, that quiet refusal to surrender, is where Stoic philosophy begins. Stoicism is not about silencing emotion or pretending to be unaffected by hardship. It's about choosing to act even when everything in you wants to shut down. It's about reclaiming control in the one place life can never take from you, your response. This is where mental resilience is forged, not in moments of glory, but in the dull, invisible hours where no one is watching. When you make your bed despite the weight on your chest, you're not just tidying a room. You're telling yourself that you still care, that your choices still matter, and that even in pain, you have agency. These decisions don't fix everything, but they change something subtle inside you. They build a rhythm of self-respect that compounds over time, laying the groundwork for healing long before you feel healed. For many, especially those silently fighting depression, loss, or burnout, strength doesn't arrive with lightning. It drips slowly, like water on stone. And in these seasons, Stoicism doesn't offer a magic cure. It offers a mindset that helps you stay standing through the storm. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations from a place of comfort. He wrote them while managing an empire under siege, losing loved ones, and battling illness. His strength wasn't in never falling. It was in rising through weariness, again and again, with steady hands. Take a look at your own life. Maybe no one knows the full weight you carry. Maybe you show up to work, care for your family, or answer calls out of obligation, not energy. That's okay. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you enduring. And Stoicism teaches us that enduring is not just surviving. It's choosing to engage with life, even when life doesn't engage with you. It's showing up for this hour, not because it's easy, but because your character is worth protecting. When we reduce strength to visible achievement, we lose the soul of what it really means to be strong. We miss the quiet, daily revolutions happening behind closed doors. People choosing not to quit on themselves, even when it would be so much easier to disappear. And in truth, it is these invisible acts of courage that carry the most weight. They are not glamorous, but they are transformational. So if today, all you've done is hold yourself together long enough to hear these words, know this: you've already taken a powerful step. And tomorrow, if all you can manage is one more, it's still enough. In a world obsessed with speed, flash, and noise, your calm, persistent survival is not a failure. It is resistance. It is proof that the spark inside you is still alive, and that is more than enough to begin again. 2. You've survived 100% of your worst days. There's something quietly powerful in looking back and realizing that every time you thought you were breaking, you didn't. You bent, maybe, you stumbled, you cried when no one was watching, but you're still here. And that alone means something. In the middle of emotional pain or personal collapse, it's easy to believe that this, whatever this is, will be the one that finally breaks you. But it hasn't. Not yet. And that's not luck. It's a kind of quiet, persistent strength that lives deeper than motivation, deeper than hope. It's survival. Stoic philosophy speaks to this part of you, the part that has endured everything, even when you didn't think you could. When your world is unraveling, perspective shrinks. All you can see is the weight on your chest, the fear in your gut, or the silence that follows effort. But life isn't lived in a single moment, and neither is suffering. The person you were when you lost someone, or when everything fell apart, may have been fragile, but they didn't vanish. They endured the storm you thought would end you. And now you carry the proof inside your body like rings inside a tree. Evidence of seasons survived, even the brutal ones. Pain can be loud, overwhelming, and all-consuming. But survival, in contrast, is often quiet. It's waking up and moving forward, even when the mind whispers that nothing will ever get better. It's choosing to carry one more hour, one more responsibility, one more unanswered prayer. And in that space, Stoicism becomes less of a philosophy and more of a lifeline. It doesn't try to erase hardship. It teaches us how to face it without losing who we are. It reminds us that while we cannot always stop the waves, we can learn how to stand through them, unmoved at the core. Think of how many times you've sat in silence, waiting for something to shift. How many moments did you walk through with a cracked heart, showing up anyway, without applause, without recognition? The world may have no record of these moments, but your soul does. And Stoic wisdom asks you to honor them, not as traumas, but as triumphs of endurance. Every setback you thought would be the last didn't hold. Every loss you feared would unravel you completely, ended up carving space for something else to grow. We often forget how adaptive we really are. Even in the middle of chaos, the body keeps breathing, the mind keeps learning, and life, however uncertain, continues. And if you look at the person you are now, you'll find pieces shaped by the hardest chapters. Your compassion might have been born from heartbreak. Your patience, the delay, your inner calm from facing things you never wanted to face. None of these qualities comes from ease. They come from surviving when you didn't know you could. That's the paradox Stoicism embraces. The hardest days are often the ones that shape our character the most. They strip away illusion and leave only the essentials: courage, presence, and resolve. These aren't grand traits. They don't come with headlines. They grow silently, like roots in the dark. And even when you feel like giving up, they remain, buried beneath the noise, waiting for you to remember them. So before you say, "I can't do this," look backward. Not to get stuck in memory, but to realize you've already done the impossible more than once. Every time you broke down and still managed to return. Every night you didn't sleep but still woke up to try again. Every moment you wanted to disappear but didn't. Those moments aren't failures. They are victories, unseen, quiet, but real. You've survived 100% of your worst days. That's not a quote on a poster. That's the truth written into the structure of your life. You're still standing. And no matter how fragile you may feel right now, that fact alone means you are stronger than whatever is trying to bring you down today. 3. Progress isn't always loud. Not every step forward makes noise. In fact, some of the most life-changing progress happens in silence. Without celebration, without witnesses, without even feeling like progress at all. It unfolds slowly, in private, in the quiet hours when no one sees the decision you made to change, to endure, to not repeat the same mistake. In a world that praises dramatic transformation, rapid success, and visible growth, it's easy to dismiss your own path just because it doesn't echo loudly. But Stoic philosophy reminds us, value does not come from volume. It comes from inner alignment. It comes from quietly living according to your principles, whether the world notices or not. You don't need a crowd to validate the fact that you're healing. You don't need applause to prove that your habits are changing. If you used to numb your pain every night with alcohol, and now you make tea instead, that is progress. If you used to lash out when overwhelmed, and now you simply breathe and pause, that is power. There's no spotlight for these moments, no applause for the restraint you show when no one is watching. But inside, you are building something far more durable than reputation. You are shaping a steady mind. The mistake many make when they feel like giving up is assuming that what they're doing isn't working, just because it hasn't been seen, hasn't gone viral, or hasn't brought in quick rewards. But progress isn't a performance. It's a private contract with your future self. It's choosing a better reaction, a better thought, a better action today, even if no one acknowledges it. And while the world may never celebrate these choices, they change your inner world in ways that become irreversible over time. This quiet growth is what Stoicism elevates above all. Marcus Aurelius wrote not for approval, not to impress others, but to correct himself in solitude. His journals were never meant to be published. They were written in the dark, to face the darkest parts of himself. That's the kind of self-discipline Stoicism teaches, not for the stage, but for the soul. And that's why, when you feel like nothing is changing, like all your efforts are going nowhere, it's important to ask, who are you becoming through this effort? Not what are you achieving, but what are you strengthening on the inside? Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not react. Sometimes progress means staying silent in a moment where your past self would have exploded. Sometimes it's walking away from a toxic cycle, not with fanfare, but with firm, quiet finality. Sometimes it's not returning a call that would drag you back into a story you've already outgrown. These aren't dramatic acts. They are shifts, small but seismic ripples that eventually change the shape of your entire life. There are people rebuilding their confidence every day without anyone knowing. They reread one page of a book every morning. They stretch for 10 minutes before sunrise. They sit in their car for 5 extra breaths before going into work just to reclaim their ground. These people may look ordinary on the outside, but inside they are giants, because they are doing the one thing that matters most. They are not giving up on themselves. If you're in a season where nothing feels fast enough, where growth feels invisible, where healing seems too slow to matter, pause. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're doing exactly what Stoic strength looks like, enduring, adjusting, and quietly choosing to stay in the fight. And that is the kind of progress that never fades. Let the world chase noise and recognition. Let others define success by speed. But you keep walking your quiet path. Because the strongest lives are rarely the loudest. And one day, without even realizing it, you'll look back and see how far those silent steps have carried you. 4. Not all battles are meant to be won today. Some days feel like a constant collision between your effort and an unmoving world. You try, you adjust, you pour energy into solving what's broken, yet nothing seems to change. It's in these moments where your patience wears thin and your motivation disappears that the mind starts whispering dangerous things. Maybe I'm not enough, maybe I'll never get through this, maybe it's too late. But Stoic philosophy reminds us, life is not measured by how quickly we win battles, but by how wisely we endure them. And some battles, no matter how urgent they feel, are simply not meant to be won today. We live in a world addicted to speed, quick fixes, and instant turnarounds. We want the debt resolved, the grief healed, the future secured, now. Yet the truth is, some chapters of your life require more than a sprint. They demand a kind of long-distance strength, the kind that isn't flashy, but is unshakable. Stoicism doesn't ask you to rush through the pain. It invites you to be still in it, to hold your ground with clarity and conviction, knowing that forward is not always fast. Sometimes, forward is standing tall when every force inside you wants to collapse. It's easy to feel like you're failing when things take longer than expected. But there's a difference between losing and simply not being finished. Growth, by nature, resists being rushed. The process of rebuilding your finances after a setback, finding your identity after divorce, or rediscovering purpose after retirement, none of these resolves overnight, and they're not supposed to. The illusion that everything should be fixed quickly creates unnecessary shame in people who are already doing the hard work of healing. But Stoic resilience doesn't bloom in ease. It is tempered over time, in seasons of ambiguity, in the slow, deliberate choice to continue showing up. Imagine the man who returns to school at 45 after decades of working dead-end jobs. Every test feels overwhelming, every essay a battle with self-doubt. But he doesn't walk in expecting a degree tomorrow. He walks in knowing that patience is part of the path. Or the woman rebuilding trust after betrayal. She doesn't expect her heart to forget overnight. She learns to live with it while slowly growing stronger than the wound. These people are not failing. They are resisting the pressure to give up just because the resolution hasn't arrived yet. In those days when nothing seems to move, your act of not giving up is more powerful than you think. It's the quiet strategy of those who understand that storms pass, not because we outrun them, but because we outlast them. When Stoicism tells us to focus only on what is within our control, it's not ignoring the pain. It's anchoring us in the one place where power remains, the present moment. Not the whole mountain, just the next step. Not the entire plan, just the next action. You don't need to defeat everything today. You only need to refuse to quit today. This isn't surrender, it's endurance. It's choosing to pace yourself through pain instead of panicking through it. It's reminding yourself that the weight you carry may not be lifted right now, but you're still capable of carrying it better. And that's where progress lives. Not in resolution, but in resistance. So if today feels like one long uphill battle and you have nothing left to offer but breath, presence, and the will to continue, offer it. That's enough. Let the world chase results. You stay grounded in the long game. Not every battle needs to be won today. But if you stay in the fight, if you keep showing up without letting your spirit rot from impatience, then tomorrow just might belong to you. 5. What if the breakdown is really a breakthrough? There are moments when everything inside you begins to unravel. When the goals you work toward collapse, the relationships you counted on fall apart, and the path you once walked with confidence vanishes beneath your feet. In these moments, it's tempting to see only failure, to believe that what's breaking must mean you're broken too. But what if the breakdown isn't the end of the story? What if it's the very crack through which your next chapter begins to breathe? Pain has a way of clouding the bigger picture. It shrinks your perspective, convinces you that this moment defines you, that nothing else will come. But hidden within that collapse is often the quiet beginning of something new. You may not see it yet, because breakthroughs rarely arrive with clarity. They often start with confusion, with loss, with silence. Stoic philosophy doesn't promise that life will always be gentle. It promises that even in the storm, you have the power to transform your suffering into something deeper, something useful, something true. When your plans fall apart, it doesn't mean you're being punished. Sometimes it means you're being redirected. And the Stoic mind doesn't cling to what was. It adapts, refocuses, and lets go of illusions that no longer serve. Marcus Aurelius wrote often of aligning the mind with nature, which meant accepting the natural rhythm of life, the blooming and the withering, the rise and the fall. If you find yourself in a place where things are falling apart, it may be because they were never solid to begin with. And that's not your fault. It's simply a sign that the foundation must be rebuilt, stronger and truer this time. Think about those who have been forced to start over after great loss. A man let go from his long-held job discovers a dormant skill he never explored, starting a small business that aligns more closely with his values. A woman devastated by divorce finds her voice through writing, reconnecting to a strength she hadn't touched in years. These transformations didn't begin in triumph, they began in chaos. But it was the chaos that cracked open space for something unexpected, something real. This isn't a call to romanticize suffering. It's a call to pay attention to what the pain might be pointing you toward. In the darkest moments, the mind seeks clarity. It searches for control. But the Stoic path doesn't demand control. It demands presence. It asks, what part of this experience can I still shape? What thought can I redirect? What action, however small, can I take today? And when you stop resisting the breakdown, when you stop cursing the closed door and start listening to what remains, you might just find that what's left is the part of you that's always been strongest, the part that can rise, rebuild, and reimagine what life could be. Growth doesn't always come wrapped in success. Sometimes it arrives disguised as failure, And the breakthrough you're searching for might not be around the corner. It might be underneath you, quietly forming a new foundation even as you feel like you're sinking. There's a kind of strength that only suffering can awaken, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that endures. And when you move through the fire, not by force, but by faith in your ability to keep going, you don't just survive, you evolve. So if today feels like you're falling apart, let yourself fall. Not into despair, but into the truth of where you really are. Let what is false burn away. Let what was never truly yours go. The person who rises from this will not be the same. They will be wiser, quieter, and more unshakable. Because they will know that what nearly broke them became the very thing that made them whole. 6. You're allowed to rest. It's not quitting. There's a quiet kind of pressure that lives beneath the surface of modern life, whispering that if you're not always moving, you're falling behind. That if you take a break, even for a moment, you're weak. But real strength, the kind that Stoic philosophy teaches us to cultivate, knows the difference between quitting and resting. Rest is not a sign that you've failed. It's a sign that you're still in the game, still valuing your energy enough to protect it. And in a world that constantly demands more, knowing when to pause is not laziness, it's wisdom. We often measure our worth by output, by what we accomplish in a day, or how much we can endure before collapsing. But your body is not a machine. Your mind is not an engine to be pushed endlessly without repair. Even the most disciplined warriors, even the most devoted caregivers, need time to breathe. Stoicism is not about pushing yourself to the edge of burnout. It's about sustainability. It's about staying in the fight long enough to finish it. And that means stepping back when needed. Not because you've given up, but because you're choosing to endure with intelligence, not ego. In fact, many people who appear unbreakable are only holding themselves together by denying their limits. And that denial has a cost. Fatigue that grows into despair, tension that becomes illness, emotional numbness that steals your ability to feel anything at all. The Stoic path doesn't ignore these realities. It acknowledges them with compassion. It asks you to be present enough to notice when your soul is tired, when your efforts are no longer rooted in purpose, but in fear of being seen as weak. And it gives you permission to stop, not forever, just long enough to remember why you began. Imagine the person who has been caring for others non-stop, raising children, tending to aging parents, showing up to work while holding in grief or anxiety. From the outside, they're responsible, reliable, and selfless. But inside, they're drowning in silence. They may feel guilt for needing space, for dreaming of escape, for simply wanting to sleep without worry. But the Stoic perspective reframes this guilt. To take care of others well, you must first know how to return to yourself. Rest is the act of returning, not escaping, but reconnecting with the clarity and strength that burn out clouds. There's a reason nature moves in cycles. Seasons come and go. Even the sun sets. Nothing strong lasts forever without pause. And you, too, are allowed to follow this rhythm. Let the world chase endless progress. Let the algorithms demand productivity. But you come back to what's real, to your breath, to stillness, to the part of you that doesn't need to do anything to be enough. And when you rest, do it fully. Not with shame, not with your phone in hand or guilt in your chest. Rest like it matters, because it does. Rest like a warrior gathering strength, not retreating. Let your nervous system reset. Let your thoughts slow down. Let your body stop clenching. This is not the end. This is you preparing to rise again with greater awareness and deeper calm. The world will not fall apart because you stepped back. The people who truly care will understand, and your mission, whatever it is, will still be waiting. But you'll return to it, not as a tired, hollow version of yourself, but as someone who knows the value of balance. And that, in the long run, is what will allow you to endure. So take your pause, sit in it, breathe through it, because resting today might be the very reason you don't give up tomorrow. 7. Your story isn't over yet. Just because today feels heavy doesn't mean it's the end. It might feel like the pages of your life are blank now, that the ink has run dry or the plot has lost its meaning. But the truth is, you're still holding the pen. And as long as you're breathing, this story isn't finished. One chapter closing doesn't mean the book is done. Sometimes it just means something needs to shift, inside you, around you, or both. before the next part can begin. It's easy to forget this when the weight of regret or disappointment drags behind you like a shadow. When you lose something you thought you'd always have, your job, your health, your partner, it can feel like the very structure of who you are has crumbled. But Stoic philosophy teaches us that identity isn't built on what we possess. It's built on how we respond when everything is taken away. Life is fluid, unpredictable. The Stoics didn't resist this truth. They leaned into it, knowing that the only real control we have is in the way we meet change, not in how we avoid it. There's a certain grace in starting over, not because you failed, but because you endured. And perhaps, even without realizing it, you've been preparing for this moment all along. Every time you held back tears in front of others, every time you picked yourself up without applause, you were laying the groundwork for resilience. So now, when the silence feels louder than ever, and the way forward feels too far to reach, remember, this isn't the final page. It's just a pause before the plot turns. Think of the people who rebuilt something meaningful from the ashes of what was lost. A man who spent years believing he had peaked too early, only to start a new career in his 50s that gave his life more purpose than ever before. A woman who lost everything to a bad investment but found healing through community work and began a small business fueled not by profit but passion. Their stories didn't end when they were knocked down. They changed. And that shift became their most defining chapter. Your life isn't a race to get everything right on the first try. It's a slow unfolding of lessons, setbacks, quiet victories, and unexpected turns. And Stoicism doesn't promise that the path will be smooth, but it promises you can walk it with dignity. With every step, no matter how uncertain, you build a self that is more grounded, clearer, and more rooted in something deeper than success or approval. You build strength not from avoiding pain, but from facing it fully and refusing to let it close the book on you. Maybe you're in a season where nothing makes sense. Maybe you're grieving a version of yourself that no longer fits the life you're in. That's okay. You don't need all the answers right now. What you need is one honest breath, one small decision to keep showing up. And if today that means simply holding on, then that is enough. Because even holding on is a form of progress when the world feels like it's falling apart. The Stoic way is not about becoming invincible. It's about becoming so aware of your own humanity that you stop fearing the fall. You begin to trust that you can land, rise, and right again. So if the light has dimmed, if hope feels thin, if the path seems erased, know this: the ink is still wet. The story is still yours. And what comes next might just be the chapter that finally makes sense of it all. No matter what came before, no matter how many times you've had to begin again, your story isn't over yet. You are not done. And maybe, just maybe, the most meaningful part hasn't even started. When life feels unbearably heavy, it's not always a sign to stop. It's often a quiet invitation to begin again, from a deeper place. Through the lens of Stoic philosophy, we learn that pain is not our enemy. It's the chisel that shapes resilience, the silence that strengthens clarity, and the shadow that reveals where our inner light still lives. The truth is, you don't need to have it all figured out today. You just need the courage to keep walking, one honest step at a time. Maybe your path looks different than what you imagined. Maybe your progress feels invisible. But even in the stillness, even in the waiting, something inside you is forming, a quiet strength that doesn't shake with every storm. And that strength, grounded in purpose and self-mastery, is what makes you unshakable. So breathe deeply, rest if you need to. But don't let this moment convince you that you've reached the end. You haven't. The most meaningful chapters often begin in silence. If you face days where giving up seemed easier, I invite you to share your story in the comments. You never know who might be waiting to hear that they're not alone and that it's still possible to begin again.